Well, welcome, friends. My name's Terry. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time. I've got a special guest, Jose, with me today. Jose, I'm a longtime fan, and it's going to be hard for me not to be a fanboy when I'm talking to you because I really have appreciated your work through the years, and just appreciate you taking the time this afternoon.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation. It's always good to chat and come from different angles, different lived experiences, and talk to people about the problems that they're dealing with, but also come to solutions. At the end of the day, that's what we all want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I found you about 4 or 5 years ago. You mentioned you basically helped me to kind of decide on which dumb phone I would pick, and I picked the Sunbeam at the time. I know they have upgraded since then, but I'm kind of curious of your background, because from what I understand, you did not grow up in the U.S. And so you had a different type of upbringing, perhaps, with the smartphone. You and I are different ages. I finished high school in '86, didn't get my first iPhone until the fourth one. I don't know what year that was, roughly maybe 2010. And so I kind of remember things without a phone. And I'm just kind of curious how much of your background, what was the trigger, if there was one, where you just decided, you know what, I'm going to put the dumb phone hat on and be that guy? Was there some kind of triggering moment, or was it a culmination of things that led you to actually use your voice and speak out?
Yeah, so I think so I grew up in Nicaragua. I am originally from that country. I lived there for half of my life, and then I've been here for the other half. And when I came to the United States, I was kind of like finishing my teenage years, and I came to the reality that I had not had a smartphone, and all of a sudden, smartphones were accessible to me. I had phones, I had different phones, multiple phones in my country, but here in the United States, technology has a way of becoming really accessible really fast. Of course, it's not the top edge, it's not the best technology. I was not getting iPhones, I was just getting the cheapest Android device that I could get. And that allowed me to kind of venture into the world of smart screens. Then I went to college, I went to university, and I just continue getting different phones here and there, that one, this one, et cetera, cycle upgrades every time there was a new announcement. I was really excited watching the reviews and all of that. But it wasn't until I got my first big job, if you will, that I started to notice that there were some issues. So when I was in university, I think these issues were masked because when you are in a university environment, you have friends, you have a structure, you have your classes that you have to go to, and then you go to eat, and then you go to work, and then you go work out, and then you go hang out with people towards the end. So it's very, very well structured. But when I went into my first job in a rural area, I found out that I did not have that same structure. And instead, the smartphone and digital entertainment, they fill that void, and they fill it well, right? Like they show you what you want when you want it. And as a result, I climbed the screen time ladder all the way until about 12 to 13 hours a day of usage. So that is the point where I started noticing after my first year of being employed and, kind of like in a big job, that I had gained weight. I felt my life was deteriorating fast. I felt isolated. And I said, well, something needs to be done. And that's when I kind of started looking for alternatives. And I found some people online describing dumb phones, but nobody was doing it for longer than 30 days. So a lot of people did it for 30 days. A lot of people did it maybe even for 2 months, but nobody gave me the experience that was like, what happens when you take years into this, right? Nobody was committing to a dumb phone for that long of a time. So I kind of decided to give my opinions, and eventually people started finding my content. They liked my opinions. They liked what I was doing. They asked more questions. I gave more answers. And here we are today, 7 years later, where I've been covering this topic and helping people find the device that works for them.
Gotcha. I love it. And you do an excellent job of reviews of hardwares and things like that, or different hardware, and that's where you helped me find the Sunbeam. And I liked your podcast you did with those guys. It's been maybe almost a year ago, whatever, but they were talking. They had some pretty big plans, and I think that's one thing that someone might thinking about a dumb phone, they might be thinking about something you can pick up off of, very inexpensive. But there are people now, and I think you had a large part to play in that, frankly, and others, to drive companies to say, no, there is a market here. I'm going to apply some new these aren't just throwaway phones you give to your kids or your grandparents. We're actually going to try to make some hardware that is appealing to others, right?
Yeah, I think that there has been kind of like a surge as people become more digitally fatigued. They look for these alternatives, and companies have started to step in and say, maybe I can provide that software experience, that hardware experience that is unified, that feels good, and that people are going to enjoy. Whereas in the past, yes, and even still today, we still have manufacturers that they release something this year, they sell it to you for less than $100, and then they'll sell you the next version next year. They're not really interested in letting your device have a long, life cycle. They are just interested in getting your $100 every year or every other year.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think with mine, I had the experience. I used mine for about a year, and I've slid back into an iPhone, and that's a whole nother thing. And I still have the Sunbeam. Matter of fact, I got a SIM card that I bought, and I go back and forth. But I'm not here to be, to treat this as a therapy session, so I'll just move on. But one of the things that I loved immediately, my wife hated it because basically people would contact her and say, "Hey, where the hell's Terry? He's not responding to me fast enough." And what I loved was that the Sunbeam had a little case so it could stand up, and I could look, and it had an icon, meaning that if it was a red light, that means I missed a call, and if it was green, that means I had a text message. So I could glance into a room and just see, oh, do I need to do anything? And if it was clean, then I would just move on with life. And it just freed me from the phone so much. Anyway, my point is, I think that the struggle that I've noticed the most in my experiment was not so much how quickly I could adapt. I adapted fairly quickly. It's that all the people that I engaged with, and I realized that I drifted from my friendships because I got kind of left out of the party because they realized that I wasn't participating, if you will, in the text streams and all the rest. And I'm kind of curious. I know you've written a lot about changing of lifestyle, but how do you think about those issues that people have as far as the culture versus just the individual?
There is a lot of friction that people experience when they switch into a dumb phone as a result of all of the smart things that we have allowed these devices or mini computers to take over in our life. For example, payments, identification, camera, video, music, GPS. These devices are extremely powerful and they are very convenient. So when you switch into a dumb phone, you have moments of friction within yourself. I remember when I first switched to the Light Phone 2, it was just before the pandemic, and I was very happy. And then all of a sudden, we get a virtual world thrusted into us. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to be left behind. Let me go back to the Pixel device. Let me go back to the smartphone. And I felt a lot of friction because, at the time, the Light Phone didn't have a GPS. It didn't have music. It didn't have podcasts. And I was used to all of those things. So it hit me really hard. Then I started to modify some of my usage, and I got a GPS, a standalone GPS once again. I got an MP3 player once again. I did a lot of things to make sure that I integrated my new lifestyle and try to find points where I would soften that friction. But then there is the other part of friction, that it is the friction that you apply to other people. Let it be your employer, let it be your, friends or family, because they don't know that you switched. And all of a sudden you're not part of the group chats because of, RCS. At the time, it was just iMessage, but now it's iMessage and RCS for a lot of people. Or maybe it is your employer. Do you need access to constant email or two-factor authentication? There are so many different layers. But what I tell people is that when you're first starting, you shouldn't think all or nothing. Instead, you should think in gradual steps. So at first, maybe you use the dumb phone over the weekend. It's less of a risk. You still have access to the smartphone during the week, during your work week, for your friends, your family, and you take one day off, and then you take 2 days off, and then you start building a ramp, changing, planning ahead. Was one of the greatest skills that you need with the dumb phone life, is just being able to plan ahead of time and have access to the things that you need to have. So, for example, tomorrow I head out on summer vacation, and one of the countries that we'll be visiting is Japan. So I have a list of things I'm going to print today. I'm going to the library. I have all of my emails in a folder. I'm going to print all of the confirmations. And I recommend people to do this when they're going to a different country, regardless of whether they have a smartphone or not, because you at least you have a backup, right? But for me, it's my main access point, right? So I'm going to have my confirmations for my hotels, my confirmations for travel, all of those things available. So in case that something were to happen, I have that. But this is something that I have built over time, right? This practice is something I have built over time. And even then, I also know that I will have a laptop, right? So even a fallback mechanism, a fully upgraded internet connected device. But these things take time. You know, when you're first switching, you're used to having everything within your pocket at all times, and you need to make plans so that you experience less of that friction yourself and also with others.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You got a couple of thoughts while we're on this about the friction and being gradual. Yeah, the space that I spend a lot of time in now is helping people stop drinking alcohol. I've been sober for almost 8 years, and I spent about 3 years trying to learn how to moderate myself, of like, you know, a little bit, can I just drink on the weekends, and that sort of thing. And my point is that at least from my experience, it's a lot easier to not drink than to drink a little bit. And it's almost, I heard someone say, I can't remember who, but it's like trying to quit smoking, but you have a pack of cigarettes in your pocket all the time and you're carrying them around. And it's like we're trying to gradually, and I would also say that the experience of healing, you know, you talk a lot about dopamine, and I really have felt that through my life without alcohol, of that lowering of that threshold, of feeling that healing, and also not having to think about it so much. And when you have a phone, don't have at least from my experience, when I transfer that onto my behavioral experience with my phone, is really having to build and see the phone as it only does, even though it's capable of doing so many things. I have to disconnect and say, I'm not going to use it when I'm bored. I'm not going to use it when I want to listen to music. I'm not going to use it when whatever the thing is, but it's still dang hard to make that break. And I don't know if you have any thoughts around that whole issue that I'm bringing up.
So I think that there are different levels of dependency, you know, when it comes to especially phone dependency. I think alcohol dependency, or anybody with a history of addiction. I mean, I know myself, I used to be quite dependent, and to a degree, very addicted to adult content, you know, when I was younger. It entered into my life. I think it's a very common millennial struggle for a lot of men.
Absolutely.
We come into this, or the advent of the internet allowed more access for adult content to come into children, you know, unfortunately. So yeah, I remember, you know, being 12, 13 years of age when I first saw my first video, and then that hooked me, right? It was pleasurable to a degree. I was able to see images, or, you know, I'm not trying to get too graphic here, but I'm trying to also be real about that.
It's a real issue.
There's something that happens in our brains that I got attached to that, right? And it took years for me to even recognize that attachment, to say, this is probably not something that I want to do or I want to integrate in my life. But there are people who were in worse shape than me, who needed medical intervention or internment into a facility for them to deal with this. And it would seem so trivial, right? Adult content is not something that enters into our bodies. It's not something that it's manipulated through our senses, or, like, I mean, from a somatic perspective, like from a bodily function perspective, it's not something that you're injecting or consuming, but it is something that is affecting your brain and affecting your body chemistry at the end of the day, your stress levels, all of those things. And it makes you dependent on the content as well. So it's similar with smartphones. This is not something that we're consuming. It's not something that we're having. But it is something that is producing a certain feeling in our lives, is producing a certain level of enjoyment and a certain level of convenience that is hard to let go. So yes, I agree with you that to a large degree, it is easier to let go of it completely. But you need to have a plan, because
Yes.
without a plan, you will revert back to what's convenient and to what's easy, right? It's the same thing with, for example, I have friends who dealt with alcohol, and they now drive around the bar, right? So like they don't go through the street because they don't want to see that place that gave them so much. The place gave them so much pain and pleasure at the same time, right? But they don't want to interact with that. And some people would say, like, well, they're sober. What about it? It's been 5, it's been 10, it's been 15 years. Yeah, but the mental associations are still there. And you, in a moment of weakness or in a moment of stress, may be able to go back and default to those behaviors. So yes, I do agree that probably a system that allows us to do things without the phone and to go cold turkey, as we kind of term it here in the States, it's very helpful when you have a plan, when you have a guide that is going to bring you back. So for me, for example, one thing that I did for many years and that I still do is I have a list of blocked websites on my router. So it's not on my computer. I cannot turn it off and on. If I wanted to go turn it off, I had to physically connect to my router. I had to go enter the password, which I have no idea because I don't know what the router password is. And then I have to, kind of like undo all of that. And by that point in time, then I could access those, adult content websites if I wanted to. But there are so many steps involved in that. There's enough friction and enough time that I'm going to kind of come to my senses and say, this is not something that I want in my life, even if I'm in a moment of weakness, right? So it's similar with the smartphone. If the smartphone is available 24/7, if it's just right there, then you kind of get access to it. But if you make a plan, then you're going to say, okay, if I don't have my smartphone, what am I going to do? Maybe it is, I ask my friend, I ask my partner, I go to the desktop, whatever it is that you need, you have a contingency plan. And then the final resort would be using the smartphone. Maybe it is for a week or travel or whatever it is. I mean, people have different lifestyles, but also we have to acknowledge that there are different levels of this dependency. Some people are not dependent at all. They just have a problem with regulation to a degree. Other people are extremely dependent, and their brains have been hijacked to the nth degree, and they feel like they need to do these drastic measures to actually overcome this issue.
Absolutely. The point that you bring up, and that something that I help when I work with people that are struggling with alcohol is that it's a two-part thing. What you're talking about, making a plan, is creating a little bit of distance. So one of the things that we discuss is when you have that feeling that I want to maybe have a drink, or you're in a situation, you just take a pause, meaning that for me, at least, what I would say is that there's a place in your home, a chair is what I'd recommend. I use my patio, and I just go sit on the patio. And if I can wait 30 seconds, 45 seconds, just creating some distance between the moment of thought and the moment of execution, the longer you can stretch that out. And it's not easy at first, but the longer, if you can get that to a minute, you can get that to 2 minutes, like you said, so that you can have that moment of clarity. And even if, I would like to just kind of point out that even if you wind up picking up the phone or picking up a drink, if you went from thought to drink, and then you went from thought to 2 minutes and then drink or pick up the phone, that's a win. Like you're winning if the more distance and time you can create, you're starting to create a win, if you will, and where you can ultimately maybe have a true win of not actually participating in the behavior. And I think that's very, very astute on your part, or it's a common psychological tactic, if you will. Some people call it diffusion. Depends on how you want to term it. But also, I want to go back to the planning ahead part. A little anecdote from me: I forgot my phone one day, and my iPhone, and my wife and I had dinner plans, and we had an hour before we were gonna go to the dinner. And so I live in Austin, so I was like, I don't have my phone. A lot, it's like and it's funny how not having your phone can create such a panic. And I would say that's an indication that perhaps there's too much attachment to that phone if you do feel some panic. But basically, I was like, well, how are we going to communicate and how we're going to meet up? And we had to pick a place and a time. And one of the things that we said was, talking about planning ahead, was even if I'm late, do not leave this place until I get there, kind of thing, or vice versa. Whoever gets there, sit and get a cup of coffee. We're meeting in a coffee shop type of environment. And it was kind of fun. My wife was like, wow, it felt kind of like old school, like we're dating, like the anticipation of like when you were going to, instead of like, hey, I just parked the car. Okay. Hey, I'm walking down the street. Hey, that we text so much these days where it's just like, why can't there be some distance and it made the evening more special, not having to text a whole bunch. But that's what I was saying about going back to culture. If you don't text all that time, or so you don't respond, everyone around us is expecting us to adhere to the social norms of texting back and forth and changing plans at the last minute, that sort of thing. But anyway.
I think that in your point, whenever you change to a different lifestyle, it doesn't really matter what it is. It could be in digital minimalism, it could be in, drinking, it could be in you're not going to the same crowd again and again. And one of them is diet, right? Like, in the beginning, if you switch to a different diet, let's say you go from carnivore to vegetarian, at the beginning is a lot of friction for your friends, because it's like, wait, you don't eat that, you don't eat this. But the longer you stick with it, the longer you stick with any kind of lifestyle, any kind of, like, for example, over the last 3 months, due to health issues, my doctor recommended that I take away coffee from my life, right? And it was hard in the beginning, but as time progresses, I find it easier and easier. Like, they allow me to drink other things like a chai latte, or, like a matcha latte, or whatever, like other methods of release for caffeine. But they said coffee was altering some of my cortisol levels and whatnot. So I was like, okay, sure, like I'll do it. But whenever I went to a friend's house, they were like, hey, do you want some coffee? Because that's what they used to offer me. And I said, oh, I'm not drinking coffee right now. And over time, they just stopped suggesting coffee. And then instead they suggested tea. Hey, would you like some tea? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, I'll take some chamomile, I'll take some mint tea, whatever. But the same effect happens over time whenever you switch to a dumb phone. It's like in the beginning, there's a lot of friction, there's a lot of problems, there's a lot of things to get figured out. But the longer you stick around with it, the easier it gets for everybody, because people just get used to this new normal and they don't get bothered by oh, you don't have iMessage anymore, or, oh, I cannot share the memes with you. It just becomes a different kind of relationship. And sometimes you may want that and sometimes you may not, but it is for you to decide and at least stick it out to see the transformation that happens over that time period.
I love it. Jose. So when I made a couple of videos on my YouTube channel about my Sunbeam flip phone experience, and what really surprised me, and I at the time I put in a link for people to because I got so many comments. I'm sure you get tons of comments, and I was like, hey, if you want to chit chat about this, I'm happy to have like a Zoom call like we're doing now, or Google Meet. And the vast majority of people that would reach out to me were kids who had never not had a smartphone, who grew up with a smartphone. And what I heard, the same thing I heard over and over, was how lonely they were feeling, even though they had the device. And I'm kind of curious if you've heard the same thing, and And what's your take on what's driving that loneliness feeling, even though we're in this hyper connected world with a smartphone and can text anybody and everybody and all around the world? And I'm just kind of curious your take on that part.
It's going to sound a little harsh, what I'm going to say, but I think it's necessary. And also, I'll provide some context. So, there is a great book that's called Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam. In that book, he details how we went from being a hyper social society in which we used to go to hangouts and clubs and church and coffee shops and come together for festivals and, all of these different things. People were like going to bowling leagues and little leagues. And I mean, they actually enjoyed a lot of time together, to where we were even this, he did not analyze the phenomenon post smartphone. He analyzed it even pre smartphone, and how we became more of an individualist society, right? So the cultural wave already put us in a precarious situation as human beings, because it puts us in the situation where we don't want to interact with others, or we don't have the structure to interact with others easily. We don't go out. I mean, many kids used to go out and play outside. They don't anymore for multiple reasons. But again, all of those things became a norm. But I think there is also a truth about some personal responsibility. And the harsh part that I was alluding to is that you need to get a life. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons why a lot of people are not enjoying the benefits of sociality or sociability and encounters with others and being lonely is because they are trusting technology as a means to an interesting life. So if I
Mm-hmm.
have the latest gadget, or if I know the latest references from the internet, I am a cool person.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that's not true. I mean, this is just categorically not true. That doesn't make you a cool person. What makes you a cool person is how you want to live your life, and that life brings a lot of fulfillment. And for a lot of people, what we see throughout the research is that a good life is a life that has multiple interactions with different people throughout the day. But what we do instead is, we think about this. We don't even go to the restaurant anymore to pick up our own food, but instead
Mm-hmm.
we go into a website and we ask for a stranger to drive to our food and bring it to us.
It's
So,
crazy.
you and I need to get used to getting a life and living our life instead of letting other people live that life. Because in the meantime that you're going to that restaurant, right? Let's say that restaurant is 10 miles from your house, pretty big distance, right? You don't want to drive it. But from there, you drive to that place, you see the world, you see the people. You may be able to, I don't know, maybe it's in the evening and you see a shooting star, or maybe it's during the day and you see a rainbow, and you get to actually have sensory experience in your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that makes a difference. That small interaction makes a difference in how you feel about yourself and about your day. But the reality is that most people are used to this convenience that is delivered through the internet, and they think that because they're caught up with the internet, they are living a fulfilling life. So a lot of the people that, and again, I am including myself in this, is something that I
Mm-hmm.
have worked over time. And but when I was spending 12 to 13 hours in front of the screen, it's because I didn't have anything else interesting happening in my life. But the moment that I switched to a dumb phone, that opened up the void of my time. Like, it opened up wide the time, because I couldn't be in front of the screen anymore. So I needed to find interesting things to do. So that's when I started to engaging with going to the chess club, interacting with community organizations, volunteering, talking to strangers, going to events, going to a concert, going to the restaurant, like actually
Yep.
making my life interesting. And that's
Yep.
what I think is missing from a lot of people that come to try to find, or they find a lot of fulfillment on their smartphone, because it shields them and protects them, and it gives them an interesting life at home. So
Mm-hmm.
the dependency cycle continues. But when you get a life, when you get something interesting and you do stuff that is interesting, there is nothing in the online world that beats the offline world. And I truly mean that. The online world is fascinating. It's really fascinating. You can see things that you probably cannot see with your own two eyes. But if you make a plan and you have the opportunity to see those same places with your own eyes, there is no replacement for that. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I'll just finish with this. Now, let's say, people, I've never been to the Taj Mahal. I've only seen it in pictures, but I'm very positive that there's no picture that can beat my presence in that site or any other
Mhm.
site in the world, right? I've never been to the Eiffel Tower. I want to go. There's pictures, there's amazing videos that show me the Eiffel Tower, but the moment that I see it with my eyes will be an experience that the internet cannot beat.
Yes, I would agree. And uh, I think it's well said, and I've got so many thoughts around all of that, but I'll just write on that point. When I see certain things in the world, it's not just like, oh, I'm experiencing this, like I get to see it, but it's basically the human, what we're kind of alluding to, at least in my opinion, is like, what does it mean to be a human? And part of that being human is recognizing our place in the world and the mystery of life, of why we're here, how we're here. And people have different explanations, whether it's religious, spiritual, whatever the case may be. But at the base nature, in my experience, is like, wow, someone built this. Who possibly did that? What's going on there? And you're in its presence, even if it's a thing, a beauty, Grand Canyon, take your pick. There's a humbling nature to that you cannot get by just seeing it in a picture. It doesn't create the same human experience that being in person does. I also want to, because you talked a little bit about, you wrote an excellent article on your Substack, The Luxury of Being Offline, and a lot of the points that you just brought up. If whoever's listening to this, if you're not aware of Jose's Substack, that's the place where online on YouTube, a lot of hardware type stuff, excellent stuff. But if you want to get Jose in his philosophical mode and really read kind of what all these things we're digging in, that's where he kind of lifts the hood, if you will, and you can see the underbelly of Jose and his I would guess philosophical moments. And I don't know if I'm a charter member or whatever, but I've been a paying member of your Substack at least a year. It's made, I don't know how long you've been doing it, but I'm very proud of that fact, because I think you inspire me a lot, and I look forward to every time you write.
I appreciate everyone's support. And there are multiple Substacks that are there. It's a good platform to get to read different ideas from people. Sometimes I think, some of these videos, there are certain areas where I could be talking about it, but I think there's something about the written word that makes me more free. Sometimes when you're in a video, you're trying to be too polished, whereas like when you're writing, you actually do all of the polishing before you publish.
So talk to me while we're on that then, and we're talking about Substack and YouTube, and do you ever have just I'm sure it's not lost on you, the paradox of using technology, right, to talk about getting rid of technology, and I get frustrated with that, because I reach people to do in what I do, right, and I'm helping them, and I get people direct messaging me and all of that about alcohol and helping them through their journey, but it's like, I also don't want to be online that much, and it's a anyway. Do you have any thoughts around the dance with the devil that we have to do in that area?
I do. I think that one of the things that happens is that nowadays we have this medium of distribution, right? Whereas before we had television and radio, now we have the online world to distribute some of this content and help people and distribute ideas as well. I think the way that I have come to reconcile it, or maybe be okay with it, is that I do it on my own terms. I think especially in the beginning when I was doing the channel, I was very like, oh, I had to be there every week. I had to make a video every week. I have to like be doing it, because the algorithm, and because whatever, like growth, yada, yada, yada. And at some point in time, I decided, you know what, this is going to be something that I do when I can do it and when I want to do it. It's not something
Hmm.
that I'm going to force myself to do because my channel requires it out of me. And I think that that's the piece that I have made with it. Is more like, yeah, I'm helping people find their devices, and I'm going to do it on my own terms. I'm going to do it when I want to. I'm not going to cave into the pressure of, for example, another thing that I don't do in my channel is I don't do advertisers right in the middle of the video. There's no advertisements in the middle of the video. There are, YouTube may place an advertisement in the middle of my video, but that's not like part of my video. So
Hmm.
I don't accept that, because I've always thought, like, if I get a contract with, let's say, Storyblocks or whatever, Skillshare, all of these companies that advertise via YouTubers, then I am contractually obligated to produce videos when I don't want to produce them, right? So I never
Yep.
want to put that pressure on me. And I said, you know what? I'm going to write when I write. I'm going to publish when I publish, and it's okay. Like, I mean, the world will continue. I don't have to be the center of attention. And I think
Hmm.
that that's a healthy thing, especially for a lot of content creators. It's like, I don't have to be the center of attention. Like, I'm okay just creating something that I love for the sake of doing it, for the sake of the creativity. And if people find it, great. And if people don't, that's okay too. I did it for myself, and I am not doing it for anybody else.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. Because I'm struggle with, uh, I struggle with it, but I think that is something that we need to I need to take control of in my life, to be like, this is what I'm doing. And, I don't know. I guess what I'm thinking is about gaining followers, and you want to get the message out, and you got to, and we all see those millions of how to grow a YouTube channel and all the rest. But it really comes down to the question of, who do you want to be? When I was listening, you mentioned that it's like, who do I want to be? And that this goes back to living a value-led life, whether that's how you want to interact with technology, how do you want to act with other addictions, whether behavioral or substance, how often you want to build a friendship, outside friendship, so that you can be more offline and be engaging. And it really, I'd encourage, and it's hard work, I'm sure, but but figuring out what your values are and who you are and who you want to be. And then you just ask the question through that lens, like, is this smartphone helping me live those values? And probably the hard answer is going to be no. Is using DoorDash really going to be helping you? Probably not. Most of the things that we want in life, like you mentioned, working out and eating better or whatever, it requires resistance or training and hard work. And what I hear from you is the smartphone or the dumb phone better, qualitatively? That's not the right question, is what I would say. The dumb phone changes your focus, and yes, maybe it causes some more resistance, if you will, but it makes you a better human. And I think that's what we're trying to get to, a human that's living a value-led life. So that's my short TED talk.
No, for sure. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people need to come to the realization or understand. Whenever you get to have distance between you and the smartphone, you start seeing it more of for what it is. It can be a tool to trap you, or it can be a tool to help you. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that tool to help you is going to become extremely useful, and you're going to use it. And sometimes you're going to say, you know what, not for this period of my time. I needed a reset to create better habits with my technology.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to touch on, if you're okay with touching on, you wrote a great article about the Google I/O on your Substack, and about Google wanting to be your therapist. And I find we're on a precipice, just like probably 2018. I don't know how to put the mark, but when the smartphone was like, why don't you want a smartphone? It's so helpful. And slowly over time, they morphed it into something that's just like you're saying, like, well, now I get my music and I get my food, and how do I pay this? And it becomes everything. And AI is slowly, they're putting this shining object in front of our face. And I feel like they're going to move the carrot, if you will, or move to where I'll sound conspiratorial, but it's going to be an AI surveillance type thing. I think you wrote a little bit about that, where they know who we are, what we are, when we do it, and they can slowly modify our humanity, if you will. And I don't know. And I think it's going to hurt a whole nother generation of kids potentially. The same argument's going to be like, well, we need to use this for work, and how do you moderate it, and all of those things. Do you see as much doom and gloom as I do in the future, or are you a little bit more optimistic in your space on
I
this?
just looked up the term, and there was a thesis a long time ago, talked about cyborg anthropology, meaning like how do we interact, like the interaction between humans and technology. Amber
Hmm.
Case, she is a friend. I know her, and she did her thesis on that as well. She kind of introduced this mediation, right? Like, we mediate through these devices. There's going to be concerns. Let's be clear. There's going to be concerns, surveillance concerns. There's going to be issues of control, issues of management. There's going to be also concerns of how much does your phone know about you now? Because if it reads everything and summarizes everything for you, they can say all they want that is done on device and is going to be anonymized, right? Et cetera, et cetera. But that all of that data ties to your profile, right? At the end of the day. And as a result, you and I will be probably monitored more closely than we already are, right? Like, I mean,
Hmm.
we think of
Hmm.
like a simple example here in the United States is the financial system, where we work, we pay taxes, and if we don't, the IRS knows immediately that we are not paying taxes, right? They
Hmm.
don't have to. We don't have to file our taxes. They already know how much we owe, and if we miss the mark by a certain percentage, then they're going to come knocking to the door with a letter saying, hey, we're going to audit you to actually, make sure, because the amount is, or the discrepancy is too large for us to lose this amount of money. And I think the same is going to happen with other information, either financial information, either personal information, communication. Recently, Meta just disabled end-to-end encryption. So now they
Hmm.
can read your private messages on Instagram, as an
Hmm.
example, right? Before, they used to be like, no, we don't want to read your text messages, so we're going to enable this feature of end-to-end encryption. But they got rid of that. And why did they get rid of that? Because their AI can read all of your conversations and feed on that data to become smarter and smarter, right? So there is going to be a lot of concerns. Now, while there are going to be a lot of concerns, I don't want to say that it's all doom and gloom, because we will be able to opt out. And I think it's going to get harder to opt out, but it's not going to get impossible to opt out. And this is where I touch on this. I have a newsletter that I'm going to be releasing probably next week or so, that talks about the relationship between finances and digital minimalism, in the sense that when you have more control of your finance, you also have more control of your digital life. Because if you are not dependent upon a certain kind of job to survive, then you can say no to those certain kind of jobs, right? And it's kind of similar in the AI world. Right now, if you opt into AI, you're saying, I'm okay with AI gaining all of these skills that I would have otherwise have. If you create independence from AI, you're going to learn skills that people will not have in the future. And that the only way that they're going to access them is via AI. So
Hmm.
that same medium of control is going to be a medium of necessity. And if you and I succumb to AI and give it all its power and don't learn any new skills or new ideas and don't understand what it's actually doing, then we're going to be at their mercy. If we learn how to navigate, how to live our lives without the necessity of AI, to create documents, to revise things, then we will fare much better. Um, I think there is also a point for optimism. As much as AI is problematic and troublesome, there is always a resistance. There is always a meet. Like, for example, even in the smartphone world, there are smartphones that are more, quote unquote, ethically sourced. That there are companies that do listen to the needs of consumers, and I think the same will be true for AI. Like there
Mhm.
will be companies that will come and say, there's too much going on this evil side of the component of the spectrum. I will be the quote unquote good guy. And then maybe there will be an open source tool or something like that that will allow us to kind of cohabitate without having to decrease and damage the world more than we already have. So there is some positive perspective here and there, but it is troublesome, and I think people should be staying away as much as possible. To not depend on these tools that they have created.
So what percentage of, do you use AI at all, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I do. I do. I use artificial intelligence for one purpose and one purpose only.
Okay.
So, transcription of videos. So I have
Yes.
a tool. I bought I don't use artificial intelligence in the cloud.
You
Instead, I
do it
I
on device.
download. Yeah, so I download a local model. It's a massive model
Mm-hmm.
that I download. And what I do is I have created a tool that allows you to put in a video, and then it gives me a transcript. So that way I can upload it to YouTube easily.
Yeah.
Because creating transcripts is it's not. So that is the only tool that I use AI for. Um, for work, I'm a product manager now. I guess technically there is AI components in my email and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I have a meeting, like it automatically
Mm-hmm.
records my meeting. But that is like a company policy. It's not something that I really have power over.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think any other areas that I use AI. I guess technically I do have a AI text message tool. So essentially, I send a query, like a question, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, I can say, "What's the latest sports scores?" and it fetches Google and it summarizes it for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a tool called Text It, Search It. And the reason why I use it, I mean, I don't use it every day or something like that, but like I have it on my phone, on the light phone, is because you can text. And sometimes there have been instances where like, oh, I need to find an address, or I need to find a phone number or something like that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then I just put the information. But I try to not use AI at all. Like I
Yeah.
don't like it. I don't think it's helpful in many areas. The only ways that it is helpful is when you need help understanding something.
Yeah.
I guess one more area that recently I've been using AI, but again, it's a local environment. It's not a cloud based. I don't like cloud based because I feel like they're doing so much damage to the environment. So I'm not using cloud
Yes.
base. So I download the model, and I have been developing some apps for dumb phones, and I have been asking the local model to, hey, give me some suggestions. What's the next feature that I need to implement on this app? That kind of stuff. But I have been learning so much coding as a result of that. So like, it kind of gives me something. And I'm like, hey, this is the next step, or this is the next thing that you need to implement, or I found this bug and I'm like, okay, let me go fix it. So again, if you- I don't think AI is evil. I don't think number one, I think AI should not be used for any creativity purposes. Anything that you put into the world, like video creation, articles, all of that stuff. I think all of that needs to be really human,
Yes.
very important. And but I think there are some use cases, and
Mm-hmm.
if you use local AI, I have less qualms about it. If you
Mm-hmm.
use cloud AI, I have more issues, just because of like the whole like image generation takes cloud resources, which are
Mm-hmm.
increasing uh, power consumption in the world, and decreasing material resources for humans. So I personally have an issue with that. But I think you can download a local LLM model and find tools that help you, create a better, kind of like system through that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think what you're tying into there, that last point about resources and things, is the very American mindset now of does this work? Does this help me as an individual? And that's the only standard by which I judge it. versus us being in community, and is this good or bad for us as a community, and how broad you view that community, will depend on person to person. I was very resistant of AI. My work dragged me into it. I actually got pretty good at giving it enough context to get answers for work where I could get things done. I'm not a techie like you, but I deal with a lot of business contracts and a lot of data, like hundreds and hundreds of pages of PDFs where it can chew through data very quickly. And it also has helped me, and it's less so now, but at first when I was working through things that I think about with my helping people with alcohol, stop drinking, sobriety, that sort of thing. And I was like, hey, this and this, and I've got 3 or 4 things that are in my mind chewing on me, meaning that they keep coming up and I cannot make the connection. And I guess to your point, I should figure out how to make that connection where I can go 1, 2, 3. And I'm a verbal processor, hence why I'm talking so long to you at the moment. But that if I can just tell it what I'm thinking in an oral, then it can help me to make those connections. And I'm like, I see it. I see that's exactly what I was feeling. And that feels good, but it also, I still have moral issues with it, because I think history has told us that, I think we live in a, going to the moral side, and I'll just not ask you to comment unless you just really want to, that the middle class America that we live in right now, the last 50 to 70 years, is an anomaly in all of history. Most of history is with rich, poor, authoritarian kings ruling the day, and people being exploited. That's the history of humans. We don't experience that now, but that is thousands and thousands of years. And my concern is that tools like this will be bent to serve that purpose more than the one we're in now.
And to be frank, that's probably the case. And I think that number one, AI has been a recent development, extremely recent, right? I think that over time, there is a great newsletter called "Where Is Your Ed At?" by Ed Citron, about the AI unsustainability of it all and how it's going to pop eventually. It may not pop in the same way that we think, like a financial catastrophe, but it's going to pop. He has enough research and plenty of points that kind of prove his ideas. But something that he says, and something that I come to reflect, is that these tools, we will find some of us will find a happy medium with them. So for example, like a lot of people when the cloud became a thing, right? Storing your photographs on the cloud became a thing. Everybody kind of adopted it. And it's like, oh yes, this is the greatest thing ever, right? But some people said, you know what? I don't want a cloud subscription. I don't want Apple to tell me that I need more storage. I'm okay just buying the hard drive and putting it there. It's not the end of the world. I'm happy with that. Or they say, every year I'm going to grab all the pictures, I'm going to select the ones that are best, and I'm going to create an album, and then I'm going to print it, and then I can have it forever, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are few and far between. And I think the same thing is going to happen with AI. I use local AI, like local LLMs, because I don't like cloud LLMs. But I understand that not everybody's going to do that. However, I think at some point, if the research is true, and I believe it's true, AI is going to become a commodity that is so expensive because of how much it costs us to produce the answers and all of that, that only a certain number of people will have the resources to actually pay for it. And as a result, we're going to have to be okay having more slower resources, and like not same thing happened with, for example, the cars. Cars became really, really, really expensive over time, even though they didn't become really better. And people decided to just keep their old cars and say, you know what, I'm just going to keep my older Toyota or Honda or whatever it is, because it still works, and I'm going to make it last as long as possible. And I think something similar will happen with AI, where at some point it's going to plateau how smart it can get, because it can only feed on so much data, right? And once it gets there, it's more of like, do you want to have the really, really, really nice luxury AI that costs you thousands and thousands of dollars a year? Or would you rather have the Toyota AI that can do a few things? It makes your life a little bit easier, but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles. And I think that that's kind of like how I see it developing.
Yes, there's a gentleman in Australia, Kira. He's got a YouTube channel, Kira, and his basic thesis is we're very close to a tipping point that for the average user, you can put an LLM on a local laptop and it'll do 99% of what an average user wants. We're not quite there. He's like maybe another 2 years of iteration of chips, but we're so close to that. That's what the majority of people could use. Well, they use it, and that's what they opt into versus cloud. Who knows? But that's his thesis, is that's what most, we don't need as much cutting edge. And going to your photograph idea, is I always find it interesting, is I'm 57, of how few pictures I have of me from 1990 to 2010 to my first iPhone. I mean, I got a few here and there, but I mean, my life is fine and I have memories, and yeah, I don't have all these photos, but I've got a million photographs. I don't know, but 20,000 photographs from 2010 till whenever that I've taken of every dumb thing I've done or thing that people text me. So I don't think that basically the value there, I see it's kind of a Neil Postman idea that basically they develop a product and then sell us on how great it is, when it's like, and we just adopt it without even really thinking about the implications of anything. So, but anyway, unless you just really want to comment, I want to be respectful of your time because we're getting close to the hour mark, and I know you're sounding like you're planning on vacation. I want to wrap up with thoughts around the movement, and you might not see yourself this way, but this is me as a fan looking at you, that you're part of the movement. You're one of the leaders. And maybe I won't go, but for me, you are the leader. You're a thought leader. You're putting your voice into the space. In the sobriety space, we talk about speaking your truth so that others can find theirs, and I think you model that great. I'd like some reflection on how can people participate in the movement, and what's the current health of the movement in your thoughts? The movement being the idea of digital minimalism, and just not even really maybe whether they have a phone or a dumb phone or not, but at least are they more aware of what's going on around them? Any comments on that and how you feel about the resistance, the movement, whatever term you want to put on it?
I think of the Star Wars movies, Yoda saying there's a disturbance in the force.
Yes.
And I think that that's where we're at in this movement, because there are two paths developing, in my view. One is a more simple, basic, back to just a regular life kind of digital minimalism. And then there is the hyper commercial, extractive, trend setting. I'm only here for a little bit of time and I'm going to sell you on as many products as I can type of digital minimalism. And I say that because, number one, digital fatigue is a big problem. Digital addiction is a big problem. But there are two different ways that is going to get solved. The first one is you're going to buy into the gurus. You're going to buy into the people that are selling you the next greatest app blocker, or they're going to, sell you into the buy my phone because my phone is going to cure you of all of the diseases, right? That is one side. And I don't necessarily like that side a lot. It has some value. I'm not going to say that it doesn't, because certain devices are better than others. So there is value in there. But then there's the other part that is more of the, why don't you just do less? Instead of trying to do it all, just do less, engage less with your phone, try to do things that are already within your reach. You asked, what can people do? And people can do what we used to do, which is go out, get a drink, go to a coffee shop with your neighbor, go eat with somebody that you love, spend time in the beach without your phone, enjoy the summer, enjoy life, do all of the things that are free to do and are great to do without having to give money to anybody. And maybe I'll link it to this divergence in the path to the way that people deal with chronic disease or something like obesity,
Mhm.
there are different methods of dealing with obesity, but right now the most popular one is Ozempic, right? You
Take a
get
pill.
you get a pill, you get a injection, and you're good to go.
Mhm. Mhm.
That is one side that the digital minimalism movement is not exempt of. There are people that are going to quote unquote try to sell you on this magnificent, amazing thing. And then there's the other side. It takes way more effort, right? It takes that you create a diet or you stick to it, that you find the work, that you exercise, that you find some friction in your life, that you leave the sweets aside and you don't eat as much ice cream
Mhm.
anymore. And I am not talking about people who have chronic issues when obesity or anything like that. It's
Right,
more
right, right.
people. It's more people who got their way, who gain a few pounds just because of these things, and they got to the point that they got obese, but they can do something about it themselves. There's two paths when you can do something about it yourself. If you don't need medical intervention, there are two paths, right? The first path is you go with these miracle drugs, regardless of the secondary effects, or you find your own way. So I think
Mhm.
that it's similar in a lot of movements, and this has happened before in so many things, and it's the same thing happening in the digital minimalism movement. There will be people trying to sell you stuff, and you need to find your own way. Um, I think it's going to evolve, but it's always going to be an undercurrent. Just given the reality of how the world is going to move towards more technology over time, more integration, more smart, this is going to be a undercurrent in the world. I will continue participating, and I hope that people watching decide to at least find a way that it gives them something of their life back. You don't have to engage in as much friction as I do.
Mhm.
You don't have to buy a flip phone, but you can find ways to reduce your digital intake and enjoy a little bit more of your life and enjoy more a little bit of your family and the time that you have on this earth. As Oliver Berkman says, is 4,000 weeks. That's what we get. It's 4,000 weeks. The question is what we're going to do with those 4,000 weeks. Some of us are going to enjoy life, and some people are going to be in front of a screen, unfortunately. The
Mhm.
question is, which one do you want to be?
Absolutely.
And I think that's where the movement is going to continue going, is asking that tough question as, what do I want my life to be? Is it just a moment in front of something, or actually seeing life through my own eyes?
Yes. Yes. Well said, Jose. I think that I would just add, the only thing I would add uh, is that just for those out there who are thinking about this, maybe you haven't been thinking about a smartphone. Just know that the devices and the companies, they're not trying to help us discover this. They're actually, Jose wrote a great article recently about Google on a Substack. I know I keep mentioning it, but it's just well done, that they are actually doing everything they can to keep that phone in our hands. And we just have to ask the question to be able to step away and to have agency and say, who do I want to be? What type of person? How do I want to show up in this world? You can ask it a million different ways, but I think it's a tremendous question. And you have great resources on your Substack, your YouTube channel. And I just appreciate you being willing to speak out and speak your truth. I'm a fan, and now I'm going to consider you my friend.
No, thank you for having me, Terry. I appreciate it, and we'll continue seeing each other. I'm always willing to talk to anybody. So if you want to reach out, go to my website. There's contact forms. You can reply to the Substack, send me a message, whatever it is. I'm here to help. I'm here to share what I know, and people can find all of the different resources that I've been able to create with the community support. And hopefully it's helpful to somebody out there.